start recording. Hello everyone, I am Aditi Sharma, and Dr. Samir Golwelkar has joined us today to talk about eroding mental health and increase in depression. What is the problem and how can you help someone going through it? I welcome you, Samir.
Yeah, hi.
First, coronavirus, and now economic crisis, layoffs, people losing jobs. The entire year of 2020 has taken a toll on our health, particularly mental health. And with the demise of actor Sushant Singh Rajput, who committed suicide recently, more and more people are now talking about what to do. If you see a loved one undergo such pressures, they really want to do something about it. But while most people want to help, they either A, don't understand what is the problem, or B, they don't know what to do about it. So Dr. Samir here with me will help me break this down for all of us. Before we start, I want to share a few things about Samir. He is a doctorate in philosophy, a relationship counselor, a psychotherapist, and a qualified psychometric specialist. He's authored a wonderful book, Epiphanies of a Mortal. His articles are regularly published in the Speaking Tree column of the Times of India. He has delivered talks on behalf of the Krishnamurti Foundation. Sir J.J. School of Arts, Mumbai, regularly hosts his talks. And to me, particularly to me, he will always be a format independent friend who defines himself as someone who studied many things and learned nothing. And perhaps that's the best kind. So let us start. Samir, people are supremely anxious now more than ever. They lose hope, they lose a certain sense of purpose in life. I want you to help us understand what is wrong as people, as families, as parents, as professionals, as children, as communities, as cultures. What is wrong? What is the problem? Why is this happening?
Well, the question is very simple. I try to make the answer sound equally simple.
Yeah.
See, basically, it is difficult to summarize, in one sentence that what is the problem. But to understand the status of affairs that we are in, let us understand the premise here. Let us understand the context here. See, man has been designed to live in a real world. So we have been gifted with senses to, cognize the surroundings. We have been given legs to move, hands to work, and everything else. So we have been basically designed to live in a real world. But because of our intelligence, because of our conditioning, because of our education and the rest, we have found comfort in an ideological world. So what happens is we try to drift into an ideological world without, it's like going to a war without domination. So on one hand, we have a lot of pleasure in the ideological world, a world full of ideas and thoughts. But at the same time, we are not equipped with the kind of communication, the kind of ammunition and the tools required to fight those wars.
Right.
So we find helpless at times. Now, there are two more things associated with what is happening. One is in this ideological world, we have always searched for pleasure. So we always want pleasure all the time. And without understanding that pleasure brings pain with it. So the level of pleasure we desire or one seeks also is associated with the same level of pain, because pain and pleasure always go together.
True.
You can never have pleasure in life without having pain. So either you target or desire lower pleasure and lower pain, or moderate pleasure and moderate pain, or high pleasure and high pain. True. But what we want is we want very high pleasure and we don't want any pain.
No pain, yeah.
So in the pursuit of that pleasure, we equip ourselves, we get skilled, we get educated, we take up tasks, we become ambitious, we try to have more and more and more, maybe material or ideological. Even having a lot of knowledge is equally material as having a car and a big house.
True.
So the more you want to have all this stuff, they will naturally bring pains with them. Now, if we find that the ability to tolerate pain or the threshold to tolerate pain is low, but we are seeking very high pleasure, then we are in a state what we have landed ourselves in at the moment. So pleasure we seek high and we are not prepared to tolerate that pain particularly in the ideological.
Okay.
So this is one aspect which has created problems.
Okay.
Second aspect is because ideological world, either we end up living in the past or we'll end up living in the future. It's very difficult to live in the moment. But if we live up in the past, we have a tendencies to get depressed. And if we live in the future, we'll get anxious. So what is happening in the present moment is because the mind is so vulnerable to influence, we are getting influenced by everything that we come across, right? From the media, the newspapers, the WhatsApp universities, falling no short. So everything is influencing your mind. And the influence that we are again tempted to go into the future and we try to figure out how the future would be. And we are facing more uncertainties. Now the future is full of uncertainties. And again, the policy is that the mind has always sought certainty. We always want surety, we always want certainty. So we are not again equipped and we are not capable to deal with the uncertainties. Uncertainties, that insecurities that the future has, all this stuff has increased the anxiety level. Then these are the basic things which are responsible for the situation that we have landed in.
A small point that emerges from your explanation here is that on one hand we say that there's so much exposure, but at the same time there's so much awareness. People today are a very different version of how people were 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. At the same time, people are more vulnerable, way more than ever. It's a contradiction that I see somehow. I was having a conversation with my dad the other day, and he was saying, we used to read the newspapers. We were also exposed to certain things. We were observing battles and wars. People were dying every day. People were dealing with so many financial struggles and problems. Not that they didn't have stress, but then they were perhaps not as vulnerable, even with limited or no exposure. So on one hand, you say that there's so much awareness. People are, more capable, more intellectual, and at the same time they're weaker, they're more vulnerable. So why this contradiction?
See, basically when you talk of awareness, let us understand that this awareness is more of knowledge and not of enlightenment, right? So awareness in a literal terms is more, right? Now, is the purpose of life to move from the more known or known to the more known, or is it the movement from the known to the unknown? That question has to be resolved first.
Right.
If you think that movement from the known to the unknown is the purpose of your life, then things are easy. If you think that known to the more known, then you are falling into a trap, because knowledge is unlimited.
Yeah.
Right. How much can your mind try to accumulate? Okay, we can exhaust a good capacity of the human mind to store and acquire, information. But at the end of the day, one should question whether all this awareness and all this information is meaningful or not.
True. What is the merit? Yeah.
With the absence of this wisdom that what is relevant and what is important to you, you go on ruthlessly and scrupulously try to store everything that comes across you.
True.
And you derive pleasure in that information. Why does a mind seek pleasure in knowing how the stars shine or how the virus moves? Or why are you so curious, so anxious, so so much and so keen on knowing things? What is there that you eventually want to know? Now, at the end, what happens? You end up storing, you end up knowing things which you cannot handle. See, everyone has the capacity to carry the baggage of information.
True.
Now, without realizing whether that information is meaningful or not, we just are made aware. Now,
so the results information overload. Yeah.
You see, the social media is full of all kinds of advices and kinds of knowledge that people are sharing. My question is, why do you want to know?
True.
Why do you want to know? If you have
outpouring so many.
Knowledge, earlier what used to happen, in our earlier education system, जो गुरु होता था ना, वो शिष्य की क्षमता देख के उसे ज्ञान देता था. The teacher or the guru used to impart knowledge on the basis of his capacity to handle it.
Right.
Now we find that the information is available free of cost on the internet.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
What you do is you go to a doctor, take a prescription. First thing you do is Google what the medicine is.
Yeah, you want to know what it is, the side effects.
So why do you want to know? So awareness is productive, is useful, is a myth. You should really question whether awareness is important or not. You should be concerned with what is relevant to you and what not, rather than going to whatever
Understood.
comes to
Very,
your
very,
story.
very well put. Yeah. And again, as an addition to what you're saying, that there's so much information and exposure and facts and statistics, so much analysis on social media and everywhere else. So hundreds and thousands of people are putting messages on their social media timelines that, I'm there. If you're going through depression, if you are feeling alone or helpless, I'm there. So people are really putting these messages that they're there for their loved ones. However, there is an observation that most of them are themselves undergoing so much trauma and emotional crisis in their own lives, that they have very little or no emotional stamina to help anyone around. How do you feel about this? Should they first address to their own problems, and can they only then help others? And why the question? Because it is said and believed that only a sorted person or only a happy person emanates it. So do you think it is important that first a person understands, or becomes self-aware, he or she understands what his own emotional stamina, traumas are, and first resolves that and then get to helping others? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, basically what is happening is, understand the human nature. We have a basic instinct of helping others, right? So I don't question that. That
True.
makes sense.
True.
Yeah. So if you find that people are in distress, or someone is thirsty or hungry, and someone wants any kind of an help, naturally it's a human instinct to go and help. Right. Forget about whether you want to really glorify it on the internet or not. That's a second aspect. But fundamentally, human nature is one wants to help. Right. वहाँ तक तो ठीक है. The problem comes is when you do not know your limits and then you exceed and then you try to help people without realizing whether you are capable of doing it or not. So I always say that, two things. One is charity begins at home. You are the world. If your life is in order, if your mind is in order, the world is in order. And a cardinal mutation, a fundamental change in yourself has the potential to change the world. You don't have to change the world by efforts. You have to change yourself. You have to figure out change, in the sense, not the change literally, but whatever cardinal or whatever fundamental change or that mutation has to happen. It has to happen inside. So unless the internal is in order, you can never bring the outer in order.
True.
First. And the second thing is that the charity always begins at home. So before you actually go out to help someone, you should figure out whether, what kind of affairs you are into. So one class of people are they, because of their over enthusiasm to help others, they are just trying to reach out to people and please come to us and we'll help you. It's fine as long as your gestures to help are reciprocated, that are radiated and are reaching out people, that makes sense. But whether you are in a position to help others or not, that one has to assess.
True.
Because most of the time I find that people who, they are not competent, they are not qualified to help, then
and then they may further confuse than help, maybe. In that scenario. Would you agree? Or the fact that they're just present itself has a healing property to it, whether they know how to help or not. Which of these would you pick?
That's the question. Who is posting all these things has to answer himself whether he is
okay.
He has the potential to help out. It's like standing in on the bank of the river and finding somebody drowning and then jumping and then realizing that I can't swim.
True. So step number 1 is your self-assessment and your own ability assessment, whether you can help and what is, your own understanding of the situation, and then maybe going and attempting it. So you would agree to that. Yeah.
A sad man talks about happiness. A happy man radiates it.
Yeah. So true.
I
can't agree more. Yeah.
You can radiate only when you have found your own internal.
And Samir, one thing that the actor's demise has aroused is at least the willingness to do something about it. I mean, you would see a lot of people who are really willing to do something. So what is it that someone can do to help a person undergoing emotional crisis? And I know that there is no algorithm, no formula. And we've already talked about that a person should first assess their own ability, whether they can help. So let's get to a step where they are very confident, they have assessed it, and they are capable of doing it. But again, what is it that they can do? I mean, how do you help a person who's undergoing so much emotional crisis in times of now?
See, there are two things associated with it. One is how to treat a sick person. So when it comes to treatment, the process is different. Second is how to be healthy, how to avoid the problems that you have landed in. See, a mind that is contemplating ending itself or harming itself is not really healthy mind.
True.
So by the time the mind has reached to that level, what have we been doing? Right. So, चोट लगने के बाद उसके ऊपर ड्रेसिंग करना is one aspect, but the point is कि what have you been doing so that the mind has reached that state.
True.
Now there need to do a lot of work. Because when it comes to treatment, there are plenty of resources. People, of course, have access to counselors, they have access to psychiatrists, they have access
professional
to
help. Yeah.
But the point is not that. The point which I am trying to emphasize is why has the mind reached that level? And if you understand, if you go into it, why does the mind come to such state of hopelessness or such state of distress where it is considering ending itself? Is basically the roots lie in how we have grown up.
Okay.
We have been conditioned to worship things. We have been trained to make things important. And the more importance we give to anything, the more we become a slave to it. And we would not be able to cope up without that. So the entire problem lies in making things important. Why should things become so important, so important that you can't live without them?
True.
The problem lies in giving importance to things. And when you give importance to things, it is not a thing which is just propped up over a moment of time. Right from our education, where early childhood we try to worship grades, we try to worship academic success, we try to compete and do better, we try to come first, second,
excel
and third
in everything.
And education institutions and parents derive immense pleasure in honoring the person who has come first, second, and third. Why should there be a race? And why should the first and the second and the third should be rewarded? Now, what happens in the mind when someone gets rewarded or someone is given the first or the second or the third rank? 50 लोग last किसी को अगर first position मिलती भी है, तो the defense which usually the system offers is, if someone is given a first rank, the next 49 will get motivated. But in reality, it doesn't happen that way. In reality, what happens is the 49 gets jealous. That someone has got something which I have not.
Yeah.
Right. Now, these feelings, they accumulate, they pile up. And
they keep feeling inadequate for the longest time, that I'm not good enough.
And then eventually you try to make something important by which you can stand, by which you can live.
Yeah.
So what we are doing in this process is we are making things so much important. We have given this importance to ambition. Why should you achieve? There's a huge gap being created between being and becoming. So becoming has become the new God. Every child is being questioned, what do you want to become? Why stupid question? Why are you asking this question? What do you want to become? So becoming is so much influence that we have created standards, we have created gods, we have started worshipping them, and we have made them so important that at one moment of time in this uncertain situation, if one doesn't come across and one doesn't get it, then you don't know how to deal with the situation. So problem starts with
understanding the why.
Yes, worshipping things, making things important, you are creating walls, you are vulnerable to influence. And eventually you pile up those things and then suddenly, one thing becomes so important that you can't live without it. So why that thing has been made so important, if you start questioning that, probably you will not land up in that situation.
But then coming to the second part of what you said, that even if I understand, suppose I'm trying to help a friend. Okay, let's maybe go micro. I'm trying to help a friend who's, undergoing so much, and I've been seeing this all the time, but now it has gotten to a point where I think I should intervene and help her. Initially, I thought that maybe it's none of my business, maybe she would not like it, but now I really want to do something about it. Now I have maybe the ability to understand the why, and now I know it. But then just how you said that अगर damage हो गया है और आप उस पे सिर्फ पट्टी लगा रहे हैं, so आप काफी आगे आ गए. You've really crossed a lot of levels, and a lot of damage has been done. So maybe standing there and thinking that you would just undo the whole thing and suddenly healing would happen is, of course, an overly ambitious agenda. So if I know the why, I mean, of course, there's no formula, there's no algorithm, I said. But then are there some specific steps after I know the problem, the cause of, what is causing that erosion? What steps can I take as an external individual to help a person? Can I break it down into maybe A, B, C, D things that I can do over and above professional help? As a friend, as a person who's been closely observing it for the longest time, what can I do to help a person after having understood the why of the situation?
Yes, definitely many things can be done in addition to, because everyone doesn't have an access to a counselor or a psychiatrist. So mental health professionals, of course, they are available, but the access is still in India is an issue.
True.
The problem is that if an individual or if a common man has an access, common man per se, who are not qualified in areas of mental health, but other people have come across situations where people are in distress.
Right.
The first thing that one should do is listen to the emotion and not to the words. See, usually people communicate their emotions through words. And the moment I try to say that, no, I'm, uncomfortable, or I'm trying to do this, or this is something which is bothering me, the listener, what he does, he tries to catch hold of the words, make his own meaning out of the words, comprehends that whatever is being said, and then he associates a meaning based on his own intelligence and tries to work out a solution and offers the solution. Now, the problem in this process is, of course, the willingness to help is there. I'm not questioning that.
Right.
But it is extremely important to understand the problem. We have conditioned our minds to become a problem-solving minds.
Correct.
So we try to find out a problem and offer a solution.
Correct.
Right. Now, this willingness to find the problem and give a solution instantaneously doesn't work in this case. You have to understand the problem. If you understand the problem completely, then many times the solution is not required at all.
Yeah, and because somebody has heard it, somebody has broken it down for me, and that itself has a healing effect on me.
Yeah. So empathetic listening works.
Wonderful.
Listening is not offering solutions. I have a pack of cards and your problem.
Yeah.
Other than that, give him a patient hearing. Be with the person. Be sympathetic. Try to understand what are the emotions that a person is trying to convey. Most of the time, people want to share their emotions, and there is no listener. But if you are listening to the emotions with your heart, with your eyes, with your nose, with your body, everything is receptive. You don't listen with your ears. You only hear with your ears. And when it comes to listening, you listen with every part of the body. So if you're listening empathetically, most of the problems would be, I would say, reduced to a great extent. And if there is an outlet where you are not judging a person based on his situation, you're not trying to offer solutions also. Don't rush to offer solutions, because you might not be having solutions.
True. Just be there.
But yes, just be there, be with the person, try to understand the emotions, be empathetic, have compassion. All these things also contribute in a big way. Earlier, if you remember, what used to happen is we used to have joint families, huge families, 20 people, 30 people, 40 people living in the house. So even if 2 or 3 people don't get along with, you will definitely find a listener.
Yeah, and you would always have somebody you would confide in, and a mentor/guide within the same building. Yeah, I agree.
No longer there. So the next step was find out friends. Now friends also are exposed to judging. So the third thing, next door neighbor. Next door neighbor is supposed to know everything about you. But with the big walls that we have made, how many of us are actually aware of what is going on just in the house next to you? Very few.
Sure.
So that channel is also closed. Now, fourth is have a mentor. If you have a mentor in life, then probably you can share many things with him.
I agree.
Find someone like you who is able to listen to you, and have someone be associated with with any person who can give a patient. And the fifth is the counselor. If ये चारों काम नहीं करते, then you go.
Then you seek help. Yeah. So understanding the why of the situation, listening intently, not going by the words of the decibel, but actually going with the content of what is being said and why. And then being there, not judging, and then eventually, of course, professional help. So I understand the entire process. I maybe personally, Samir, know at least 100 people who are going, into maybe different kinds of depression, to different kinds of emotional crisis, and each kind is a different kind. So when we talk about talking to somebody in the family, when we talk about talking to a friend, to a mentor, I have a very specific concern that I notice in the world today. Relationships have become super transactional. Every single person of every age, profession, gender, community, the first question that the person asks himself or herself is, why should I contribute? What is in it for me? And if there is nothing for me, I have lost interest. I don't want to heal you. I don't want to help you. Why should I listen? What am I getting in return, etc.? So I see my friends having a lot of friends, like 100 friends. I have 2 friends, and that's it. But then I see people who are having 50 friends, but they're not as close. And in fact, in times of crisis, they don't even pick up the phone and call them, because they know at some level that this relationship is very transactional. This relationship exists for this purpose, this exists for this purpose, etc. So in a world, and again, talking about families, nobody's house is anymore like the neighbor's house. So within families, you have such broken structure. Siblings don't get along, parents and children don't get along. And again, I'm not saying that everybody is like that, but mostly I see this mostly going around in the world. So having said this, even if I know that I'm undergoing something so huge, I know I must talk about it. And I'm not even getting suicidal thoughts, or I'm not even eroding in a way that maybe others are. But I don't know who to talk to, because I know they will either ask for a transaction. I will either have to validate what's in it for them, only then will they contribute, or I just don't trust them anymore because of how it has been. So in a scenario where I have too many people, but at the same time I don't have too many people, what do I do? Then is professional help the only way to go, or is there something else that I can do as an individual?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, because fundamentally speaking, when it comes to a human being, he exists only in relationships. Man cannot exist in isolation.
True.
So it is extremely important for the relationship to be in order. Because if we exist only in relationship, our existence is basically based on the order in which that relationship is. Now, as you wisely said, you have, but one has too many friends, but all those 1,000 Facebook friends are not, not good enough to speak your heart to. So width of relationship and depth of relationship, they rarely go together.
Yeah, agreed.
So either you go for the width or you go for the depth. But still, one has to invest in a relationship. One has to nurture a relationship. One has to find friends if one doesn't have one. One has to find people whom you can really talk your heart out. Let them be few, doesn't matter. But this is something which, if you do not have, you have to work upon. Because if you know that you do not have good friends, you do not have people to talk to, then you will have to work upon them. If you want to avoid going to a counselor or a psychiatrist, it's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. But at the same time, you have to create a backup system.
Correct.
If something is
so you have to work on it.
You have to work on it naturally. And
right.
Working on it has to be, because if someone is preferring introversion, in such a situation, the person is confined to his own self, his own room, his own, walls, and he
True.
doesn't want to go out and the rest of it. But still, at the same time, one has to invest in finding one or two people who are, willing to listen to him. So that much, because we exist in relationships, so that much relationships have to be in order. Okay. And if they are not in order, then in extreme case, then one can always rely on professional help, which should be counselors who are willing to listen. People can approach and have develop a rapport with the therapists. They can have a regular.
And then eventually that therapist can be that person in their life for them if they're unable to work on their independent structures. Yeah. And there's another connected point again about, talking to people, that there's so much social stigma attached to mental health. You would see that people who are troubled, they are perceived as weak, they are perceived as hopeless, and sometimes even dangerous. sometimes even dangerous, while they may actually be quite nice and empathetic towards others, despite what they're going through personally. How to resolve this stigma so more people can speak up without the fear of being judged? Is there a comment that you want to share for community overall?
So basically, again, we are in searching band-aids. I'll try to offer one, but fundamentally, I have to go deep into the situations why this is so.
Yeah.
So, thoughts, speech, action, and emotions in this part of the world, they are north, south, east, and west. We think something, we feel X, we do something Y, and we talk about Z. So what we say, what we think, we create, because of our intelligence, we are able to create a gap, a difference between all these things. We have artificially manipulated the gap, and we are proud of it. You know, I am too weak, but I have projected myself as so strong, and I am proud of it. You know,
Yeah,
I
it
have
becomes
projected, I have
strength for you.
successfully.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are worshipping me without me. Who am I? So one should question whether, you know, what, how does it matter if, you know, if you are feeling low and if you are crying in front of people, why should it be discouraged? What's wrong in that? Why do you want to show that you are good? Because we have been trained since beginning to project.
Don't cry. It's weakness. Yeah.
Social standards that was set in their worship, and they have to follow them. No one questions the social standards.
Right.
Right. So as a kind of a, you know, an approach, I would say that have only those standards, which for which you are willing to die. Then only those standards are meaningful. Otherwise, don't have standards. Why do you follow so many standards in life?
Yeah. So again, it requires a lot of self-awareness, a lot of mindfulness to exercise what the society is offering you, teaching you what part to absorb, what part to filter. So you have to apply your own mind all the time instead of just blindly accepting it. Is that the point you're making?
Question standards. Why do you want to follow them? Have less standards. Doesn't matter. You're good enough. Take life easy. There is a pressure to fit into everything which is a society has set. I remember Krishnamurti saying one thing in his words. I can only quote unquote. He said, "It is no measure of health to conform to the requirements of the potentially sick society. It is no measure of health to conform to the standards of the potentially sick society. It is no measure of health." So first you have potentially sick standards, and then you try to conform to them, and then they say you are healthy.
Very true. So true. Yeah.
Set your loose. Take life easy. Where is the pressure?
Yeah.
So that is that.
Yeah.
When it comes to banded, I can tell you that if you want to really find out a way of breaking the taboo of going to a counselor or going to a therapist, I think we should convert it into a status symbol. Going to a therapist should become a status symbol, just like masks have become a status symbol. Someone gifted me this, a brand, and I'm sure I've 50 people in the last 1 week. Everybody's talking, oh, that's a good brand. So what we have done, we have converted that mask also into a status symbol. So if you want to look at it that way, then revise your constructs and make it that way. Okay, walk into a therapist's office once in 2 months, 3 months, and have a family therapist.
For my own wellness, it's like a family thing that we do for our own wellness. Yeah.
If it is going to contribute in a positive way, look at it that way.
So I will, I will sum this up into one final question, which I'm sure in the last 2 decades of your practicing counseling and psychology, every single person must have asked you that what is the true mantra of having good mental health? I know you will say there is not one. I know you will say a lot of those things. However, this world is full of so many kinds of people, and they all, I know they are looking for something. I know they are seeking a certain sense of purpose, and most of them have their hypothesis as I'm seeking happiness, but then they don't know what happiness is. So is there a true mantra for having a good mental health, or a mantra for being a truly happy person? I know this is maybe the 1000th time somebody's asking you this. I would still like you to answer.
Yeah, answer this question. Literally, sometimes I question that whether happiness exists or not.
I would ask sometimes, because I truly believe that happiness comes at a price, and people don't want to pay it. They just don't want to be happy. And there's just a lot of manthan that goes on, So how would you define that? Is there a mantra at all?
I don't know whether there's a mantra for happiness itself, because I question many times whether happiness exists or not. So that's a different chapter altogether.
Yeah.
But a comfortable life, I would say, yes, there is certainly a key to every lock, but the key is different for every lock. So what is the key for me will not be the key for you. What is the key for you will not be the key for the other. So Buddha could not create another Buddha in so many years.
Agreed.
We created professors of Buddhism, we created followers of Buddhism, but there is another Buddha. So the key which is there for you is only for you. So I would say that following anyone will not help. But you can listen, you can try to understand. History is full of wealth. We have 6 Indian philosophies, right? From Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Ved, Upanishad, Sankhya, Yoga, Buddhism, Jainism, and so much and so. If you're not fascinated by Indian or that Indian mythology and Indian philosophy doesn't inspire you, pick up West, read from Voltaire, Nietzsche, Kant, there are plenty of them. But go into the depth, try to find out what it is. Find out whether you are a Gyan Yogi. If you're a Gyan Yogi, find out a tool which you can, the tool of Gyan which can liberate you. If you're a Karma Yogi, find God in your action. If you're a Bhakti Yogi, find in submission. So there are ways you have to find out who you are first, unless you know. See what the therapist does. The therapist first tries to understand what the person is. And then the therapist, if the person is, I find is a Gyan Yogi, then it is an intellectual method or the Gyan which will liberate him.
It's a different course then.
Asking him to go to temple every day morning.
Yeah.
If the person is Bhakti, who believes in, who finds solace in going to a temple every day morning, for him asking and finding out what God is doesn't make sense. Because then he's chosen surrender as his path.
True.
So the dynamics why two people are never alike is because if I say that a man is a manifestation of those balances of those 3 guns, Sattva, Rajas and Tam, and then that combination is different for every individual, every object, every existence, everything, every entity in existence that is different. No 2 things can gel together, so there can be no perfect relationship between 2 things. Because the combination of these 3 gunas in 2 different people or 2 object and a person and everything who are in relationships are different. So there can never be a perfect relationship. But if you understand who you are, then you will be able to find a key. And to figure out who you are, you may take help.
So it's a very independent finding of a unique course of action that suits the kind of person you are. So the destination can be the same for everyone, which is maybe ultimately trying to be happy, but the course varies person to person.
This is like trying to be happy. If it is a goal, I feel that we can never achieve it.
Right.
But the pursuit of happiness itself will breed sorrow.
True.
If I want to become happy, that will become another challenge for me. If I say I am happy, then you are happy. Then you don't want to become happy. So there is a difference between being happy and putting efforts to become happy.
Very well put.
Get away with that notion of becoming happy.
Right.
It's a big market. I understand. There's a big industry on that. But if had it worked, the society would have been full of happy people. So becoming happy or trying to become happy will create a gap between being and becoming, which will breed sorrow and it will breed another conflict.
Yeah.
So instead of that, I would suggest that there are 2 things I can suggest where it makes sense. I don't know, because one has to find out on his own. But first is nothing is important. If you reduce the importance of everything in life, I think life will be easy. Don't make anything important. And secondly, have very few standards. Don't have standards. Have very few. Find your own knowledge. And 2 questions one should answer in everyone's life. There are 2 questions which I think one should find answers to. One is, what is your purpose in life? Not is what is the purpose of existence or what is the purpose of your neighbor.
Your independent purpose as a person. What
is your purpose in life? Firstly. And secondly, what is the right action for you? Not what is the right action as defined in Ved and defined in the moral science textbook or defined by the part of or the samaj in which you are a member to or coveted into the club. Not all those standards. But what is the right action for you? If you have answers to these 2 questions, I think most of the things are in order.
Okay. Wonderful, Samir. So we finish here the conversation that is not the introspection. And I appreciate your planting seeds of a certain sense of awakening. I'm sure a lot of people who would see this, hear this, would be really enlightened and would be more self-aware. They would try to establish a lot of whys and a lot of how they are and what is going wrong on their own, or maybe speak to somebody, a friend, a mentor, or maybe seek professional help. Thank you so much for all the effort and your time. And I shall connect with you with another topic where we would need a lot of help. Thank you so much and take care.
All the best. Luck.